The Calgary Stampeders turned Wes Cates into a doctor. No. The Calgary Stampeders made Wes Cates a doctor. Okay. No, they didn't pay for his tuition. They just traded it, and it eventually landed a doctor. Here's this week's Trade Tree.
Down by 15 for Darnold. He's going to keep it.
In 2006, the Calgary Stampeders signed a young, up-and-coming running back by the name of Wesley Q. Cates. I don't know his middle name. It very well could be Quincy, could be, I don't know, but it just sounded cute. Leave me alone. But the Calgary Stampeders had a bull by the name of Joffrey Reynolds. Wes Cates being the up-and-coming running back, Calgary management knew that they had value at the depth running back position, and they wanted to get full value for it. And so the trade was made. The Calgary Stampeders send Wes Cates to the Saskatchewan Roughriders in exchange for a conditional pick in 2009 and offensive lineman Rob Lazio. Now, we can the actual players in this deal go by pretty quick. Rob Lazio lasted a couple of years in Calgary, ends up getting the Grey Cup in 2008, finishes his career as a Calgary Stampeder. One and done. Wes Cates on the Saskatchewan Roughrider side, he had a lengthy career with Saskatchewan, winning the Grey Cup in 2007 and back-to-back Grey Cup appearances in 2009 and 2010. He was an All-Star in 08. He was an All-Star in 2010. But just like a lot of Rider fans, they kind of want to forget the 2011 season, and so did Wes Cates because it was all horrible, injury-riddled, and he was gone and never saw the football field again. But let's not say that Saskatchewan didn't get anything out of this deal. They got a lot out of this. And they only had to give up an offensive lineman and eventually a third-round pick. Well, let's see what Calgary did with that conditional pick. Now, eventually it was a fourth-round pick in 2009. And the Calgary Stampeders used that to select offensive lineman Steve Middleton. Now, a lot of people outside of Calgary were going like, who? Well, in Calgary, he was a very reliable sixth offensive lineman. Fit in whenever he needed to in emergencies and game time decisions. He was reliable and versatile, to say the least. But after spending a few seasons in Calgary, not fitting into the lineup on a regular basis, Huffnagel's crew said, hey, we got to get some value for this individual because we don't anticipate that this guy's going to be in the starting rotation anytime soon, and they shipped him off to the BC Lions. Steve Middleton was shipped off in 2013 to the BC Lions in exchange for a third-round pick in 2014. Now, in Middleton, he does get traded a couple of more times, but that's for another trade tree. Before I get into this trade, I did kind of go back and forth to see which one of these trades should I start with, because the end result was the same. Now, it was this trade, and there was a 2007 trade that sent Taylor Robertson and a draft pick to the Toronto Argonauts in exchange for a couple of draft picks. And the reason being is because one of the draft picks they got back was the guy that they actually shipped with this following third-round pick in 2014. So, let's continue, shall we? The Calgary Stampeders send a third-round pick and Justin Phillips, the third-round pick is the 2014 draft, by the way, to the newly awarded franchise, the Ottawa Redblacks, in exchange for a third-round pick in 2014 and a third-round pick in 2015. Now, before I tell you who these draft pick selections, I should tell you that when this trade started was 2007, okay? By the time this most recent draft pick gets announced, it's 2015. So it's 8 years. 8 years, it should be notified. 8 years. So multiple trades, in and out, Calgary gets a Grey Cup in 2008, and they eventually get to the Grey Cup again in 2012, losing it to Toronto, and of course winning it in 2014 before this final pick gets announced, okay? And the reason that there's context, because the pick that they announced in 2015 never played it down in the CFL. That was running back Tyler Varga. Now you're probably thinking, hey, that name sounds familiar, because he had a lot of hype. He was a Canadian running back going into the 2015 draft. Now, there was a lot of things that he said he wanted to go south of the border, test out his NFL opportunities, and by the time that the NFL opportunities ran out, Calgary said, hey, you know what, we're going to get Jerome Messam, and the Canadian running back dynasty as we know it just kind of bloomed. Everybody has a Canadian running back, and there was just no opportunities for Varga by the time he realized he wanted to get back into football, and he hasn't played it down at Wikipedia's best source at all, even south of the border. So that's it. The 2014 third round pick, that's important because where we are right now. But at the time, it was even extra important because I thought Calgary added versatility to an already dangerous offensive line. They announced the selection of offensive lineman Laurent Duvernay-Tardif. Now you're probably thinking, hey, why have that name sounds familiar? Well, because without sports, at least without the CFL in 2020, we paid more attention to the NFL. And this guy was with the Kansas City Chiefs, and he opted out of the 2020 season, enter the medical field. That's right, he was going to help out with the COVID outbreak, the COVID-19 outbreak during this pandemic, and he should be commended for that. Now, knowing all that, and kudos to him for doing that, did Calgary really win this trade? They made multiple trades to get this asset that still hold the rights to it technically, but they eventually, I don't. This is one of those things where, yeah, it's still open, but it's theoretically closed. It's closed. Consider it closed. Calgary, they won the Grey Cup in 2008 and 2014 throughout this trade tree, but they didn't, outside of Rob Lassie, I don't think it really benefited from this trade. Whereas Saskatchewan, okay, it was one and done. They got a guy that they can actually sit on their roster for 4 years. That's impressive. 1 Grey Cup, 2 Grey Cup appearances on top of that, so technically 3. So it's a 33 winning percentage in the Grey Cup, and they did it with 1 move. Okay, maybe it was many moves because we've talked about those trade trees, but in trade tree, it was 1 move, and it paid off immensely. So, who do you think won this trade? Who did well? Leave your comments in the comments below to see who won this trade tree or the initial trade. I let you know my thoughts. If you have any future suggestions for future trade trees, hit them up on Twitter. It can be reached at Rouge Delts. Podcast can be reached at Rouge Radio. And of course, this video is powered by the Canadian Football Podcast Network, or CF Pod Network, on Twitter.